long before the first light of dawn broke upon the silent world. The ancient Sumerians spoke of a time when only the endless night stretched across the void, and the winds alone carried the faintest echoes of existence. From this quiet velvet darkness, there rose a breath so subtle, so ancient, that even the stars had yet to open their eyes. This breath was Enlil, the keeper of the cosmic balance, the silent mover of the heavens, and the guardian of mortal destinies. He was neither born nor forged. Instead, he was a whisper that gathered into a sigh that grew into a storm. Enlil was the wind made flesh, the soul of every breeze that kissed the earth, and the fury of every gale that howled across the seas. He was the force that set the sun on its path and pulled the moon through her lonely arc across the night sky. In the beginning, Enlil was alone. He wandered through the silent firmament, listening to the echoes of his own breath as it curved across the nothingness. With each inhalation, he summoned the breath of life. With each exhalation, he sowed the seeds of destiny. The first grains of sand trembled beneath his sigh. The mountains themselves shuddered to his touch, and the rivers dreamed of the sound of his footsteps. Yet even in the solitude of creation, Enlil sensed that he was not the sole voice in the void. Beneath the hush of his winds, there were other murmurs, faint and trembling like children waiting to be born. The earth itself, known as Ki, lay sleeping beneath the eternal sky, waiting for the breath of Enlil to awaken her. And far above Anu, the father of the firmament watched in patient silence. With a motion as gentle as the first breeze of spring, Enlil swept across the face of the sleeping earth. His breath carried the memory of dawn, stirring the rivers from their slumber and coaxing the mountains to rise. Where his winds passed, the seeds of life unfurled tiny whispers of green, soft as the sigh of a sleeping child. In the gathering light of his creation, Enlil crowned himself not with gold or jewels, but with the intangible weight of purpose. He was the keeper of balance, the one who measured each breath of wind and each beat of a mortal heart. He knew that every gust carried the echo of fate, and every quiet breeze bore the weight of future generations. And so in this quiet dawn, Enlil's voice rose for the first time, a song that was not a song, but a vow. A vow to keep the balance, to hold the scales of earth and sky steady, even as the stars themselves began to flicker into being. Thus began the tale of Enlil, the keeper of the cosmic balance. A tale not of swords or thunder, but of winds and whispers of destinies carried on the breath of the eternal. In the hush of that first morning, as the sun rose and the rivers began to sing, Enlil stood watchful and alone. The first breath of the world and the silent promise of all that was yet to come. In the quiet after that first breath, Enlil began to shape the world with the tender patience of a sculptor, smoothing the curves of clay. He knew that to keep the balance was to weave the strands of life together, binding them in a tapestry of purpose and harmony. His winds carried seeds across the newborn land, planting forests where once there was only silence. In every gust, there was a promise. In every sigh, a hint of what might be. The rivers learned to dance to the rhythm of his breath, and the mountains found their voices in the thunder of his storms. But Enlil did not craft alone. Far above him, Anu watched with the calm eyes of the eternal sky, while below Ki, the sleeping earth stirred with dreams of green. From their silent communion, the first echoes of creation grew stronger. Together they wove a world of stone, and water light and shadow, each element balanced by the winds that swept between them. As Enlil wandered the new earth, he spoke not in words, but in the language of air and rustling leaves. His breath shaped the clouds that drifted like silver ships across the sky, and his whispers taught the rivers to sing lullabies to the sleeping seeds. Even the mountains bent low to listen, their peaks crowned in the mist of his passing. In those early days, Enlil wore no crown and carried no scepter. His power was not a thunderous roar, but a quiet certainty, a knowledge that even the softest breeze could shape the fate of worlds. Where others might command with fire and fury, he ruled with the invisible strength of the wind, ever-changing, ever-present, yet always gentle in its touch. Yet as the world took shape, Enlil knew that balance was not born of solitude. He felt the stirrings of others, faint pulses in the fabric of the new earth, waiting to awaken. The children of Ki and Anu would rise each with their own song, to sing each with their own breath, to add to the chorus of creation. Enlil paused, listening to the silence between the winds. In that hush, he sensed the birth of destinies yet to come. He saw the first flicker of cities in the minds of mortals who had not yet been born, the rise of temples, and the whisper of prayers that would one day drift on his breezes. He saw the fragile thread that connected every life to the breath of the world, threads that he alone could weave and protect. In the twilight of that second dawn, Enlil stood upon the highest hill, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his feet and the caress of the sky above. He knew that he was the bridge between them, the keeper of the breath that wove them together. And so he stood silent but ever watchful, his breath shaping the world and his heart attuned to the quiet music of creation. The winds carried his promise across the young land, a promise of balance, of harmony, and of a world forever held in the gentle cradle of the cosmic breath. As Enlil moved across the newborn world, the silent breath of creation wove threads of life from the void. From the cradle of sky and earth, the first children of the wind were born, spirits of earth and sky, each with a destiny woven by Enlil's breath. The first was Ninhursag, goddess of the mountains and mother of green life. She rose from the sleeping earth like a forest awakening after winter. In her footsteps, flowers bloomed in the cracks of stone, and rivers whispered secrets to the roots of ancient trees. She spoke in the language of living things, and wherever her gaze fell, the world grew lush and vibrant. Beside her stood Enki, the keeper of waters, whose laughter echoed in the babble of brooks and the crash of the sea's waves. He was the river's song, and the ocean's deep murmur, a companion to the wind in the endless dance of water and air. He wove currents of life through every stream, tracing paths of silver and blue upon the skin of the earth. In those days, the world was young and unmarked by time's weight. The children of Ki and Anu rose in gentle harmony, each guided by the breath of Enlil. He taught them the art of balance, how to listen to the murmur of rivers, how to feel the tremor of roots deep within the soil, and how to let the winds sing the songs of their hearts. But even in that soft dawn, Enlil felt the first shivers of discord. The breath of life, once pure and singular, began to weave in different directions. The children of the earth were not all the same, and each carried the seed of desire within them, a spark of wanting, of hunger for more than what the wind could offer. Enlil watched with patient eyes his breath, a gentle reminder of the balance they must keep. He saw how rivers might flood if they forgot the whispers of the wind, how mountains might crumble if they turned their backs on the sky. He knew that his children must learn the delicate dance of harmony, or the world they shared would shatter like a clay vessel in the storm. And so he walked among them, not as a master, but as a guide. In the rustle of leaves, he taught them humility. In the sigh of the breeze, he offered them patience. With each breath, he reminded them that power is nothing without harmony, that even the stars' strongest wind can be stilled by a single drop of rain. As the sun dipped low behind the hills, and the stars blinked open like curious eyes, Enlil stood beneath the first canopy of night. He watched the rivers wind their way to the sea, the mountains sleep in twilight's glow, and the children of the earth and sky dream of what might yet be. In that quiet hour, Enlil whispered a promise to the darkness, a promise that he would guard the balance of all things, no matter how the world might change. And the winds, ever loyal, carried his vow across the land, a breath that would echo through every dawn to come. The days of gentle creation gave way to days of choice, as the children of the earth and sky found their voices and began to shape the world with their own breath. Enlil, ever watchful, felt the winds stir with new currents, currents of ambition and wonder, of curiosity and doubt. Ninhursag, with her nurturing touch, wove gardens that spilled across the hillsides like green silk. She taught the trees to stand tall, and the rivers to cradle their banks, and the earth itself blossomed beneath her gentle hand. But even she, mother of the growing things, felt a restlessness in the roots, a yearning to reach beyond the ground that held them. Enki, the playful wanderer, shaped rivers that ran deeper their songs, growing more complex with each passing dawn. He taught the waters to dance and sing, to carve valleys, and to feed the fields. Yet in the swirling currents of his laughter, there was a hunger too, an ache for knowledge hidden in the depths, secrets that the wind alone could not reveal. Enlil saw these stirrings and knew that the world was no longer a silent cradle. With every breath of wind that rippled through the young forests, he felt the weight of choice settle upon the shoulders of the children of creation. In each decision, each turning of a river's path, each seed planted in the dark earth, there was a whisper of destiny. The winds grew restless, and with them came the first storms. Not storms of ruin, but of awakening. Thunder rolled across the sky like a drumbeat of fate, and the rains fell in silver sheets, washing the earth clean and calling forth the scent of new beginnings. In the dance of lightning and shadow, Enlil saw the shape of futures yet to come, futures fragile as the first shoots of spring, yet strong as the ancient hills. Standing upon the high places, Enlil raised his hands to the sky, feeling the power of the storm pulse through his veins. He knew that balance was not the stillness of a pond, but the constant motion of the sea. It was in the storms that the world found its strength, in the winds that tore down and rebuilt what must endure. And so Enlil did not fear the storm. Instead, he embraced it, letting the thunder sing his name and the rain carry his breath across the land. In each gust of wind, he whispered a single truth: the choice is the birthright of all who walk upon the earth, and that only through choice can harmony be forged. As the storm's fury waned, and the stars once more peered down from the velvet sky, Enlil stood in the hush of the aftermath. The world was changed. Rivers cut deeper. Forests bent low beneath the weight of rain, and the children of creation stood taller, their eyes reflecting the glimmer of possibility. In the quiet that followed Enlil's breath was a gentle lullaby, a promise that even in the storms of choice, he would keep the balance. And the winds, loyal as ever, carried that promise into the dreams of all who would one day call this world their home. In the days that followed the first storms, the children of the earth and sky watched as the world grew green and wild, its rivers weaving silver patterns upon the skin of the earth, its forests whispering secrets to the winds. And yet, even as Enlil's breath carried the songs of the gods across the land, there came a stirring deeper still, a murmur that was not of stone or rare but of something new. From the rich soil that Ninhursag had blessed, and the waters that Enki had shaped, the first mortals rose. They were fragile as reeds in the river's current, yet within them flickered the same breath that moved the stars. In their chests beat the rhythm of the earth, and in their eyes shone the quiet wonder of the dawn. Enlil watched them with a gaze as gentle as the evening breeze. He saw how they listened to the songs of rivers and learned the patterns of the seasons. He felt the tremor of their hopes and fears as they took their first steps upon the land. And he knew that their breath was a part of his own, a living testament to the balance he kept. The mortals built their homes in the shelter of hills and the shadow of trees. They learned the language of the wind and the music of the rain. In the whisper of leaves and the murmur of rivers, they heard the echoes of Enlil's promise, though they did not yet know his name. But with life came longing, and with longing the first prayers. At dawn, they lifted their faces to the sky, feeling the caress of the wind upon their skin. And in that simple breath, they offered their hopes to the keeper of the balance. They did not know his face, but they felt his presence in the hush of twilight and the sigh of the night wind. Enlil listened to those first prayers carried to him on the breath of the world. They were clumsy and unsure, like the first steps of a child. But within them pulsed a quiet power, a seed of devotion that would one day blossom into temples of stone and cities of song. He did not answer with thunder or lightning. Instead, he let the wind carry his blessing in the rustle of leaves and the soft patter of rain. In each breath of air that cooled a fevered brow, in each gust that scattered the seeds of grain, the mortals felt the touch of the keeper of the balance. And so the breath of mortals joined the ancient breath of the world, a fragile thread in the tapestry that Enlil wove with every sigh. In their songs and in their silences, he found the echo of his own promise that the balance of the world was not his alone, to keep but a dance shared by every living thing. As the stars turned slowly in the endless sky, Enlil watched over them, a silent guardian, a breath in the darkness, and a promise that even the smallest voice can shape the fate of all the world. As the mortals grew in number and knowledge, they wove their lives into the soft weave of the earth's breath. Villages rose like blossoms from the green hills, each hut a quiet testament to the dreams of those who called them home. In every hearth fire's glow there flickered a piece of the dawn that Enlil had given. At night, the wind carried the warmth of these fires skyward, and Enlil, watching from the high places, felt the gentle pull of their songs. These were not the grand hymns of the gods, but the humble music of mortals. Laughter shared beside a cooking pot, lullabies hummed to a restless child, the hush of two souls whispering secrets by lamplight. Enlil cherished these small songs as he did the thunder of the storms. In the tender hush of a mother's prayer, he felt the same power that moved mountains and turned rivers from their course. The balance he kept was not forged only in the tempest of the sky, but also in the quiet moments of mortal life, each breath a thread in the fabric of the world. The children of Ki and Anu watched as mortals learned to shape the land. Enki taught them the ways of water, how to guide the rivers, how to coax the rains from the sky. Ninhursag showed them the secrets of seed and soil, the gentle tending of green life that fed their bodies and souls. Yet always, it was Enlil's breath that wove these teachings together. His wind that carried pollen from bloom to bloom, that whispered the hidden lessons of the world. But with knowledge came restlessness. Mortals began to wonder at the sky's wide silence, at the mysteries of the stars that watched their hearth fires from afar. They began to dream of more than warmth and bread, of temples that reached higher than the tallest tree, and of songs that would echo beyond the hills. Enlil felt these dreams like a distant drumbeat in the air. He knew that in each dream lay both promise and peril. For the breath of mortals, though small, was as wild and fierce as the gales that swept the lonely plains. Left unchecked, it could shatter the fragile balance he had so carefully tended, and so he wove his breath ever more softly around the hearth fires of mortals. In the hush between their heartbeats, he whispered caution and patience. In the sigh of the night wind, he carried gentle reminders of the earth's embrace, of the river's soft lullabies. As the moon climbed high, and the stars blinked like watchful eyes, Enlil stood unseen upon the hilltops, listening. In the mingled songs of mortals and the quiet breath of the world, he heard the harmony he had always sought to keep. And though the path ahead was hidden in the dark, he knew that his promise would endure, so long as the wind still whispered soft and endless through every home, every heart, every dawn. As the years wove their endless dance, mortals looked beyond the hearth fires to the silent sky, and in their hearts there bloomed a yearning, a need to give shape to the whispers of wind and water, to the unseen breath that held their lives in balance. Under the patient gaze of Enlil, the first temples rose from the earth like songs made of stone. Carved from river clay and mountain rock, they reached for the sky with spires that mirrored the trees, their walls etched with prayers that spoke of gratitude and hope. Within these sacred spaces, mortals gathered in the hush of dawn, their voices lifted in chants that blended with the sigh of the morning wind. They did not know the face of Enlil, but they felt his presence in the soft rustle of leaves, in the gentle sigh of the river as it carried the sky's reflection upon its skin. Enlil watched as these temples grew, each one a testament to the breath he had shared with the world. He felt their songs like ripples in the currents of air, weaving through the valleys and across the hills. In the echo of every prayer, he sensed the mortal understanding of his promise that balance was not the absence of change, but the harmony that could be born from it. The children of Ki and Anu walked among the temples, their footsteps soft as the mist at dawn. Ninhursag's touch blessed the stones, coaxing green vines to climb their walls in gentle embrace. Enki's laughter echoed in the fountains that spilled silver laughter into quiet courtyards, the water a reminder of the rivers that had always carried the breath of Enlil's promise. But even as the temples rose in humble devotion, Enlil felt the weight of mortal dreams pressing against the winds. In the flicker of torchlight and the murmur of chanted prayers, he heard not just gratitude, but desire. Desire for favor, for power, for a glimpse of the eternal in the flickering light of mortal hearts. He knew that this desire was a double-edged blade. It could build bridges of trust between earth and sky, or it could splinter the balance he had so carefully tended. In the hush of each night, as the last prayer fell into silence, Enlil let his breath drift through the quiet halls, a soft warning that the winds would not always sing in gentle tones. Yet he did not turn away from their devotion. He let their prayers mingle with the song of the rivers and the sigh of the trees, weaving them into the great tapestry of breath that held the world together. In every echo of mortal hope, he found a reason to continue an unspoken vow that he would guard this balance for as long as the winds carried the promise of dawn. And so beneath the watchful stars, Enlil stood in the silence beyond the temple's stone embrace. His breath unseen, but ever present, wove through the dreams of those who called upon him a quiet song that whispered of harmony and of the endless breath that held the world in balance. Though the temple stood as humble prayers etched in stone, the breath of mortals was as changeable as the wind. In the shadowed corners of their dreams, envy began to stir a restless murmur that troubled the harmony Enlil had woven. The mortals once content to sing, the earth song began to measure their prayers against one another. In the quiet of moonlit nights, they wondered whose voice rose louder, whose offering reached higher, whose breath carried the weight of destiny. From these questions, discord was born, a gentle crack in the harmony that had held the world in balance. Enlil felt this discord in the tremor of the air, like a distant storm gathering beyond the horizon. He watched as the first arguments rose like clouds over the silver rivers, as rivalries coiled like vines around the roots of ancient trees. Each breath of jealousy was a thread pulled taut, straining the tapestry he had so carefully tended. Yet even in this discord, Enlil did not withdraw his breath. He understood that harmony was not a quiet without sound, but a balance of many voices, each song finding its place in the music of the world. In the river's dance and the mountain's patient strength, he found the memory of this balance, a promise that he would not let slip away. He whispered this promise to the winds, letting them carry his vow to the hearts of mortals, who still listened in the hush of night. In the sigh of a gentle breeze that stirred the temple torches, in the soft rustle of leaves that fell like prayers to the earth, his breath spoke of patience, of the need to listen even when the world was loud with longing. Ninhursag, ever nurturing, sought to soothe the cracks of discord, with green life weaving vines around broken stones, and teaching mortals that even in division there could be growth. Enki's laughter shimmered in the rivers, a playful reminder that even the strongest currents must bend around the rocks that shape their path. But the seeds of discord had taken root, and Enlil knew that they could not be plucked without tearing the whole world apart. So he watched and he listened, his breath a steady presence in the shifting winds. At night, as the stars turned slowly in their ancient dance, Enlil stood upon the high places and let his breath drift into the dreams of mortals. He wove his promise there, quiet, unshakable, that the winds would not abandon them, that the balance of the world was a covenant written in every sigh and every whisper of the dawn. And in that promise, even as discord grew like a shadow across the land, Enlil kept watch. For he knew that though mortals might forget the language of the wind, the breath that moved the stars would never falter, and the song of balance would never truly be lost. As discord coiled in the hearts of mortals, and the quiet balance of the world grew taut with strain, Enlil called upon the ancient winds, the guardians of breath and bearers of destiny. In the high places where the mountains touched the sky, he gathered them in a council as old as time itself. The north wind came first, cloaked in icy clarity, her voice sharp as the winter's edge. She spoke of stillness, of the need to hush the restless murmur of mortal hearts, and let the world rest in frozen peace. Her breath carried the scent of snowfields untouched by footsteps, a promise of silence that was both gentle and stern. The south wind followed warm as the sun lit earth, her laughter dancing like light upon the river's skin. She spoke of life, of the endless dance of growing things that could not be stilled by fear or doubt. Her breath carried the perfume of flowers in bloom and the soft promise of rain. Then came the east wind, swift and restless as dawn. He spoke of change, of the promise that lay in each new sunrise and each trembling leaf that turned its face to the sky. His breath was the whisper of beginnings of journeys, yet untraveled, and the quiet courage of hope. Last of all came the west wind, slow and deep as twilight. She spoke of memory, of the gentle weight of the past, and the soft music of all that had come before. Her breath was the hush of the world at dusk, the sigh of rivers that remember the mountain's first tears. Together they stood in the gathering dusk, and Enlil, keeper of the balance, listened. In each of their voices, he heard a piece of the harmony he had sworn to protect. Stillness and life change, and memory each a breath. In the endless song of the world, he wove their words into a single promise, his own breath binding them like threads of silver and gold. To the north he offered patience, to the south gentle guidance, to the east the wisdom to shape change without shattering, and to the west the comfort of memory held lightly. In the hush that followed, the winds bowed their heads, their sighs mingling into a single breath that drifted down to the world below. Enlil watched as their promise wove through the temples and the rivers, through the hearts of mortals who still listened to the whispers of dawn. He knew that the balance of the world was not his alone to keep, but a covenant shared by all who called the earth home. And so as the first stars flickered like watchful eyes in the night, Enlil let his breath flow across the land, a gentle tide that carried the promise of the winds, a promise that though discord might rise, the harmony of the world would endure in every sigh, every prayer, every breath of life. As the winds returned to their silent watch, their promise woven into the breath of the world, Enlil turned his gaze to the mortals who walked beneath the stars. He saw how their lives, so small and fleeting, glimmered like tiny flames in the dark, each one a fragile thread in the vast tapestry of the earth. Enlil knew that every life was a story, each breath a verse in the endless poem of creation. He felt the weight of their choices, the gentle pull of dreams spun from hope and fear. In the quiet of each dawn, he watched as they sowed seeds of kindness in the soil, as they lifted their voices in songs that reached beyond the temple's walls. But he also saw the shadows that gathered at the edges of their dreams, whispers of ambition and doubt, of hunger that could not be sated by bread alone. The same breath that carried prayers to the sky could also carry words of envy and discord, and Enlil felt the balance tremble in the space between these breaths. In that trembling he wove the threads of destiny, silken and strong, invisible yet unbreakable. Each thread carried the echo of a choice, the soft weight of a sigh. Enlil did not command the threads. He merely guided them, weaving them into a pattern that balanced every sorrow with a promise, every hope with a gentle breath of patience. The mortals did not see these threads, but they felt them in the quiet moments of doubt and wonder. When the river's song grew soft and the night winds sighed low, they felt a touch upon their hearts, a presence as gentle as the hush of falling snow, yet as vast as the endless sky. In the temples, priests and priestesses raised their hands to the heavens, seeking the face of the one who wove their fates. They did not know that Enlil walked beside them in the hush of dawn, his breath in every rustle of leaves, his promise in every drop of rain. And in the laughter of children playing in the shadow of ancient stones, in the quiet strength of hands that shaped clay into vessels of life, Enlil found the music of the world, a melody that rose and fell like the tides, a harmony that could be heard only in the stillness of listening hearts. As the moon rose silver and silent in the sky, Enlil stood in the quiet places, his breath weaving through the darkness like a lullaby. He knew that the world's balance was a fragile thing, but he also knew that in every breath, every mortal sigh, there was the power to mend what had been broken, to heal what had been wounded. And so with the stars as his witness, and the winds as his allies, Enlil wove on a silent guardian of the breath that held the world in balance, a keeper of destinies written in the quiet sighs of dawn. As the moon traced her silver path across the quiet sky, Enlil watched the dreams of mortals drift like clouds across the night. In the hush between the stars, he felt their longings, some soft as a child's breath, others fierce as the wind that howls in the depths of winter. These dreams were threads spun from the heart's quiet fire. Some glowed warm and steady, woven from the promise of love and the hope of gentle days. Others burned bright and wild, kindled by ambition's hunger and the restless ache for more than what the earth could offer. Enlil felt each dream as a pulse in the breath of the world, a tremor that carried the weight of choices yet to be made. He knew that dreams were the first step on every path, and that each one, no matter how small, could shape the balance he held. In the temples, the priest spoke of fate as a river, its course set from the first breath to the last. But Enlil, keeper of the winds, knew that destiny was not a single path carved in stone. It was a tapestry of countless threads, each thread a choice, each choice a breath that shifted the course of rivers and the shape of mountains. The children of Ki and Anu watched with ancient eyes as mortals dreamed. Ninhursag tended the dreams of those who sought the green blessing of life, while Enki wove laughter into the rivers of dreamers who longed for knowledge. Each of them played their part at. It was Enlil who wove the final pattern, his breath binding each fragile hope into the song of the world. But even he could not still the restlessness that grew in mortal hearts. In the shadowed corners of their dreams, envy and pride took root, their whispers, as soft as the night wind, yet as dangerous as a storm's fury. Enlil felt these shadows stir, and he knew that the balance he held was more fragile than ever. Still, he did not turn away. Instead, he let his breath flow through the dreams of mortals, a quiet reminder that even in the wildest hopes, there could be harmony. In the sigh of a breeze across a sleeping village, in the soft hush of snow falling on a silent hill, he whispered the ancient promise that balance was not the silencing of desire, but the weaving of every breath into a song that could cradle the dawn. And so beneath the watchful stars and the silent gaze of the moon, Enlil kept his vigil. He was the breath that carried every dream across the threshold of night, the keeper of the balance that would endure so long as the world still turned and the winds still sang. As the dawn rose soft and gold across the sleeping world, Enlil felt the gentle stirring of change in the breath of the earth. It moved like a tide beneath the stillness, a whisper that promised both growth and upheaval. The mortals whose dreams had grown bold beneath the patient stars began to reach beyond the quiet valleys that had cradled them. They built roads that cut across the green hills, and their footsteps echoed in the deep places of the earth. They carved temples taller and stronger, their songs rising like incense to the sky. Enlil watched with the quiet patience of the wind. In each stone lifted, he felt the weight of purpose and the tremor of longing. He knew that change was as much a part of the world as the rivers that carved the mountains and the rains that fed the waiting soil. Yet even as he listened to the songs of builders and dreamers, he felt the discord growing soft at first, like a shadow at twilight, then stronger, like a storm, gathering in the hush before dawn. The breath of mortals was no longer a single sigh, but a chorus of voices that sometimes clashed and tangled like roots in the dark. Enlil did not fear this change. He understood that the balance he kept was not a still pond, but a river that must bend and twist around every stone. In the river's ceaseless journey, he saw the shape of mortal ambition and the quiet strength that could rise from even the fiercest storms. But he also knew that the breath of mortals could be both gentle and sharp, a blade that could carve new paths or cut through the fragile weave of harmony. In the growing cities he heard prayers lifted not in gratitude, but in hunger for power, for conquest, for a voice that would outlast the wind. He felt the weight of these prayers like stones in the current, each one a choice that could tilt the balance he held so carefully. Yet even as the winds carried these whispers across the land, Enlil's breath remained steady, weaving the discord into the song of the world. In the hush of each dusk, as the fires burned low and the stars blinked like ancient eyes, he whispered to the rivers and the hills, to the seeds sleeping in the dark earth. His breath spoke of patience, of the promise that the winds would always return, that balance could always be found, even in the midst of change. And so as the world shifted beneath the breath of dawn and the restless dreams of mortals, Enlil stood watchful, the silent heart of the wind and the gentle voice of the endless sky. As the mortals' cities rose higher, their voices grew louder in the breath of the world. Enlil felt the weight of their prayers like a drumbeat in the wind. Prayers for harvests that would never fail, for walls that would stand against any storm, for power that would bend even the breath of the gods. In the quiet of dawn, Enlil listened. He heard the gentle voices of those who still sang the river's song, who still whispered gratitude to the sky. But he also heard the sharper tones, the cold hunger of kings who would claim the earth's breath as their own, the quiet despair of those who bent beneath the weight of mortal greed. He watched as temples once humble and open to the sky grew heavy with gold and shadow. Priests whispered secrets in dark halls, their voices echoing in the silence of stone. In the market squares, merchants traded not just goods, but the hopes and fears of those who had forgotten the soft music of the wind. Enlil felt the balance tremble. He knew that power once sought only as a prayer to the dawn had become a hunger that devoured the songs of the world. In the hush between each breath, he felt the threads of destiny strain, stretched thin by the weight of mortal desire. Yet even in this discord, Enlil did not turn away. He let his breath drift through the crowded streets and the quiet fields, a soft sigh that reminded the world of the promise he had always kept. In the laughter of children who still chased the wind, in the hush of green hills untouched by mortal hands, he felt the memory of balance waiting to be found again. Ninhursag, the mother of green life, walked the fields in silence, her touch coaxing new shoots from tired earth. Enki, with his laughter that echoed in every drop of rain, whispered secrets to the rivers that still danced to the music of the dawn. And Enlil, ever watchful, wove their gifts into the breath of the world, a promise that life would always return, even to the fields, trampled by pride. As the moon rose silver and silent in the sky, Enlil stood in the hush of the night, his breath a quiet promise in the darkness. He knew that the world's balance could be bent but never broken, that every empire, no matter how high it rose, would one day be dust in the wind. And so with each sigh of the night breeze, he wove his vow into the breath of the world, a vow that the winds would carry forever, that no matter how heavy the price of power, the song of balance would always find its voice whispering in the quiet spaces of the dawn. As the ages turned like silent wheels in the darkness, Enlil watched the breath of mortals rise and fall, each generation a sigh in the endless song of the world. Cities that once touched the sky crumbled into dust, and rivers that had known the laughter of children now sang only to the moon. Yet through every change, every storm that swept across the land, Enlil felt the memory of the first breath, a promise as ancient as the dawn woven into the winds that never ceased to sing. In the quiet spaces where no temple stood and no prayer was spoken, he found the echoes of this memory. In the hush of a lonely hill, where wild flowers danced in the silver hush of snowfall that blanketed the earth in white silence, Enlil felt the gentle beat of balance, waiting to be reborn. Mortals grown wise with the weight of ages still sought the breath of the world in their own quiet ways. In the fields where old men bent to coax green life from the patient earth, in the lullabies that mothers sang to sleeping children, Enlil heard the same song that had always been a promise, carried in the hush of each dawn, a vow whispered in every sigh of wind. The children of Ki and Anu walked the earth as silent witnesses their gifts, a quiet blessing in the restless dance of life. Ninhursag's green touch wove beauty from ruin, and Enki's laughter sparkled in the rivers that still remembered the music of rain. And Enlil, keeper of the balance, stood watchful and unseen, his breath weaving through the dreams of the world. He did not seek temples built of stone or prayers offered in trembling voices. He listened to the quiet music that rose from the hearts of those who still walked gently on the earth. those who knew that the breath of life was a gift to be tended, not claimed. In the hush of twilight, as the stars blinked awake in the velvet sky, Enlil stood upon the high places, the ancient winds, his only companions. He felt the echoes of every prayer ever spoken, every song ever sung, woven into the endless sigh of the earth. And in that breath he found the promise that had never wavered, that so long as the wind still whispered and the rivers still sang, the balance of the world would endure, carried in the quiet hearts of those who remembered the language of the dawn. As the first light of dawn spread soft gold across the quiet hills, Enlil stood watchful, his breath a gentle current in the hush that lay upon the world. He felt the pulse of life in every green blade that trembled in the morning wind, in every ripple that danced across the river's silver skin. In that hush, he knew that the breath of the world was not his alone. It rose in the songs of children who laughed in the warmth of the sun, in the careful hands of those who planted seeds with patient hope, in the silent prayers of those who listened to the music of the rain. The mortals their dreams carried in the quiet of each dawn did not see Enlil's face in the shifting clouds or the soft glow of starlight. Yet in their hearts they felt the promise of the breath he shared, a promise as ancient as the sky, woven into the hush that falls between each beat of life. Ninhursag, with her green touch, still coaxed blossoms from barren earth, and Enki's laughter rippled in the rivers that carried the memory of every rain. And Enlil, patient and eternal, wove their gifts into the breath of the world, a tapestry of balance that stretched beyond the reach of mortal hands. He knew that storms would rise, that mortal voices would sometimes clash like thunder in the night. He knew that the breath of ambition would sometimes burn like wildfire, and that even the strongest walls would one day crumble. Yet in each quiet dawn, he felt the gentle music of the world, a song that spoke of endurance and of the endless weaving of breath and dream. And so with the first light of each new day, Enlil stood upon the high places, his gaze as soft as the morning breeze. He let his breath drift across the waking earth, a promise that even in the fiercest storms, the song of balance would never be silenced. For Enlil, keeper of the balance and breath of the dawn, knew that the world was not made of stone or silence, but of voices, each one a thread in the endless tapestry of the sky. In every sigh, every prayer, every quiet hope that rose in the hush before sunrise, he felt the music of life itself, and with each dawn, he wove that music anew, a silent vow that the breath of the world would endure for as long as the wind still sang and the rivers still danced in silver light. In the gentle hush of the morning, as the sun climbed golden above the hills, Enlil let his breath become the dawn, soft, patient, eternal, a keeper of dreams, a whisper of balance, and a promise that the winds would never cease to sing.